Mr. Wade Duty is the Associate Executive Director of the Louisiana Casino Association. Hey, Mr. Wade, how are you this morning? Thank you for joining us. Welcome to
good.
KEEL.
Wade, let me ask you, the new law, Senate Bill 316, allows the riverboat casinos to move 1,200 feet on land from their designated berth space. There's a lot of confusion about what that means they can do. Do they have to keep the boats in place? Do they have to have a walkway still to that old boat? What's the requirement?
No, it's an either-or proposition. First of all, it's voluntary. The boats would be choosing whether they would exercise this option. They are limited to moving no more than 1,200 feet, and that number was arrived at by looking at which boat would have to move the greatest distance to get on the dry side of a levee. So they're not relocating to the middle of a town. They're not picking up and moving 5 miles. It's just what can you move and barely get on the dry side of the levee. So that's where the 1,200 feet came from.
Do they have to keep a connection to their existing riverboat at all?
No, they do not. They would be able to construct a landside facility and transition their gaming space to that.
You know, we were looking, and the new rule is, what is it, 2,365 gaming positions. Under the current 30,000 square foot rule, what is the average number of gaming positions, and what kind of enlargement, if you will this give local casinos?
Well, despite all of the misunderstanding and sometimes deliberate misinformation, this actually is a limiting feature. So inside of 30,000 square feet, you can actually put in about 2,500 gaming positions. So what the task force did, which met for 18 months prior to this legislation being introduced, was consider what facility is currently operating the largest number of positions, and then they allowed an adjustment factor for table games, because not everybody operates the same table games or in the same manner, and they arrived at 2,365. But again, so doing the math, which is something that has eluded a lot of people, or they've chosen to let it elude them, presently you could put about 37,500 gaming positions among the 15 riverboats. This legislation will actually cap that number. Instead of 37,500, it would be 35,475. So it's actually a reduction of about 6%.
You mentioned a second ago, you mentioned purposeful misinformation. What is that, and who is doing that?
Good question, because on the Senate vote, on the Senate floor vote we saw a couple of weeks ago, someone distributed a floor note alleging that this would be a 67% expansion of gaming positions. So I think what they did was they took the number of positions currently in use, which again is not the maximum number. There is no maximum cap under existing statute until this bill became law yesterday. So they, I think they took what was in use presently and said, well, you know, this could go to an enlargement. But again, the 67% doesn't make sense no matter how you do the math. So that's where we arrived at, you know, there's been deliberate misinformation about this.
We're talking to Wade Duty, Executive Director of the Louisiana Casino Association. Wade, let's hone in on our local boats here. Let's start Shreveport. Okay. There's a lot of people who think El Dorado and Samstown are kind of landlocked and don't have a place to go. What could they move across the street to their parking garages and put their casinos there if they wished? Or pardon me,
even on the other side, because if you go 1,200 feet from the current position, if you're familiar with Shreveport, you're up to Travis Street, which is a pretty sort of deserted area that could revitalize a lot of downtown.
Well, and that was one of the driving factors that the task force considered is, you know, the Gaming Control Board still has to approve any project. So this is not just a boats do whatever they want proposition. They're going to have to demonstrate that it's an economically viable and benefit to both the local market and the state overall. So that's something the board would take into consideration, is what's it's going to do to revitalize an existing area. You know, will a boat move? That's entirely up to the individual boats. They've got to make the economic case, because this will not be an inexpensive proposition. So if you're in a market that has faced a lot of challenges and the reinvestment does not make sense, then you may not see a move. But you're right. With respect to Shreveport, as I understand, both boats are tenants of the city, so they've got limitations physically on where they could wind up.
I mean, can you conceive a scenario where there are two brand new great big casinos in downtown Shreveport? I certainly can, huh?
It's a possibility, but again, you have to make the economic case. A lot of people were very fearful, and a lot of hand-wringing occurred over, there's going to be this explosion of gaming. But at the end of the day, you have 15 boats now. You're going to have 15 facilities later. They may look a little different, but if you know where the casinos are today, you're going to know where they are after they make the transition to land. So what a potential project may look like, it's too early to tell, because each one of these casino companies will have to go back to their parent corporation and make the pitch to get the capital investment to make these construction projects happen. So it's going to be a multi-year process. It won't happen overnight. The Game Control Board has started working on the rule process, which is a 6-month process in itself, to fill in some of the nuts and bolts aspect of this. But yeah, you'll definitely see not committing to any specific market, but you'll definitely see tens of millions of dollars in new construction occurring with these transitions.
Is the regulatory process, you just said it's about 6 months, is that in your mind, is that a lengthy one? Is it a hasty? Is it a speedy approval process? Is there a way to make it quicker if current casinos want to build?
Not really, because again, you've got to have some time for regulators to construct a regulatory framework for this. And then the rule promulgation process is the same for any state agency. So whether you're talking about forestry or any other state, entity, they all operate under the same set of administrative rule creation. So the Gaming Control Board will move with, deliberate speed, but it's not going to make any hasty decisions, and they're certainly not going to get pushed into anything. They've been a very effective regulator, and they will weigh these projects. If a proposal comes to, move on land, and it's going to be just a move on land, I don't look for the board to entertain that at all. They're going to want to see additional amenities, some shopping, some restaurants, some entertainment venues. It will not just be put the machines in a warehouse on land.
Let me ask you this: if you have a crystal ball, do you see a couple of the boats here in Shreveport Bossier going for this and doing this?
It's something that all the boats are going to look at. But as far as me speculating, that's an internal decision within their respective corporations. So, one of the things, again, you're going to have to look at is what you've already touched on. Do they have the physical capacity to make a transition on shore, or are they so landlocked that they can't really do anything effective? So that's going to weigh heavily in this too. But keep in mind also, it's not just the getting off the water. This conversion to gaming positions and doing away with the paddle wheel helps the operator stabilize. The Shreveport market's been hit heavy by Native American gaming in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. This is a measure, even if they don't transition onto land, that will help them stabilize that local market in the face of what they've experienced since, I guess, 2005.
And Wade, one last thing, Diamond Jacks. Any news on if that license is going to leave our area and go to another community?
There was legislation filed to authorize a relocation to Tangipahoa Parish. That legislation was defeated probably by the midpoint of the session, mm-hmm. and there's nothing else that is on the horizon for that. So, it takes a legislative authorization to create a new waterway, which is what that project was looking at doing. So, absent the legislation being filed, it certainly doesn't look like anything will be taking place in 2018.
Wade Duty, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Not a problem.